Hi, I'm KS Garner, and you're listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with the Ghoul Comics CEO and writer of the Stokey Maroon City Detective comic series, David Haynes III, here to promote the comics' first issue on Kickstarter. Welcome, David.
Hey, what's up? What's up?
Well, outside my introduction, who is David Haynes III in his own words?
David Haynes III. Well, David Haynes, David Haynes was more like everybody kind of know me as like Dave or like Flea or whatever the case may be. But like in my in my professional career, I wanted to kind of go with, my whole name and just kind of like put it out there. But like me, who would David Haynes III be? As a professional, it would be someone that's trying to advocate for change, right? Trying to build like a utopia out of society. Like that's what David Haynes III would ideally like represent, like that's like my overall goal in my professional, endeavors.
Uh-huh. So what is Stokey Maroon City Detective about?
All right, so Stokey Maroon City Detective is my second comic book in a series of about an overall series of non-comics, but the Stokey Maroon City Detective series is only about three comics long. It's 3 parts, so 3 acts, and that like act structure, but every issue is an individual act. And then prior to the Stokey Maroon City Detective comic was the Ghoul comics and stuff, right? So that's more or less like where all of this stems from. That's like the Big Bang. That's the universe that kind of that's the comic that created the universe. So Stokey is a assassin, like this like kind of cool assassin from a place called like the Land of Water. But the Land of Water is also another book and title I'm working on. So in order for I got to like bring it all the way back. So let me kind of like bring everything together, right? So boom. Stokey Maroon City Detective is a part of a series of 5. So in the series of 5, it's actually supposed to start with the Ghoul comics, like the Ghoul series, which is a 6-part comic series that explains the life of a 15-year-old Black boy genius named Nevaim, growing up as an orphan in this whole new city, in this whole new town or whatever, or city called Maroon City, which this whole new city called Maroon City, which was created after the second great flood. I'm like this kind of like, I'm not big on global warming as in like researching it, but I'm like big on the fact of like I do believe in it, and I do feel like the world is going to feel effects from it. So I like this whole story is kind of set around like, what if global warming actually was real, right? What if the ice what they call those things, like the polar caps or whatever over there in Antarctica, something like that.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So if those melt or whatever the case may be, and then there's like a lot of flooding in the world, and like North and South America gets flooded. That's like the quote unquote like hypothetical world that the Ghouliverse kind of takes place in, right? So the Ghouliverse, that's what I would call like all 5 of like the books I'm writing, this like serialization and franchise of characters and settings that all take place in like one world, like almost like a J.R. Tolkien, like Lord of the Rings type of like thing, or Game of Thrones, you know what I mean? That George R.R. Martin type of just world building activity. So in the Ghoul or whatever with Nevaim, a 15-year-old boy genius, he's set in this Maroon City where he's kind of like just like thrusted there, right? He's like an orphan in there, whatever the case may be. But that story in particular, I couldn't really I couldn't really flesh it out the way I wanted to without giving like the audience some type of action, right? Like comic books supposed to be about like action and fighting and stuff like that. But prior to me actually writing the Ghoul, I had wrote like a regular like novel. So I came from that. So in order for me to get to like the Stokey Maroon City Detective, I just wanted to like give the audience like just like a straight action packed anime Naruto style comic book, just to kind of like maybe try to like build some type of like audience and fan base. And then I'll bring him into like the more dialogue stuff, which is like, pardon me, which is like the Ghoul, which is a whole like another comic series, which was actually the first comic series I worked with, right? That's like the website I have, www.thegoulcomics.com, theghoulcomics.com. And there you can actually get a free webtoon for the Ghoul issue number 0 to help you understand what took place during the Great Flood. And this is a character named Shalom who, like, you know, it's like the story of like greed versus like life and death. Like, I guess I would be like greed versus like mortality. You know what I mean? Like that type of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that wasn't like long-winded, but it's like a lot. But you know, more or less, and Stokey is just action-packed. It's self-contained. You could read the first issue and you'll understand the whole universe. You know what I mean?
So how was the whole process of, I guess, you bring it in Stokey, right? And not Naeem, what was the boy's name?
Nevaim or Never.
Naeem, yeah. So you're shifting over from what was over Salome? Was the
yeah, all right. So Shalom is
Salam and then Naeem. So how was it? So you move on from the Ghoul series to now branching off to this new city. So how was it, just, I guess, from a thought in your head to now working in a new, like a different setting now, in a different city, you should say. And so how did you work that out? Like, I want to branch off from here to here. And how did that work?
And I understand, like, how did I get from the Ghoul to Stokey? But those two particular comics are actually set in the same city. So Nevaim gets kidnapped in Maroon City, and Stokey's the guy who's coming to basically try to rescue the boy or whatever the case may be. So those two stories take place in Maroon City. But like there's other stories like Land of Fire that take place in another city. And for me to get to that book, so how did I do it like that? Well, you know, honestly, I think like as a black man, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to say all over the place, but you know, you have different ideas and stuff, right? So you want to try to tell different stories, or different things may come into play. Like, okay, case in like an example, the first book I wrote, Land of Fire, which is set in a whole nother city than Maroon City, right? It's set on like literally the whole across the ocean, the whole nother side of like the world at that moment in time, right? 2054. But in that particular story, I'm telling a story about Bitcoin, right? So 2017, I wanted to tell a story about how Black people could use Bitcoin to like economically free themselves. And when I was telling that story, I was like, okay, at that point in time, that was a good story for them. But then like the George Floyd thing happened, then like COVID happened. And it's like, okay, that's a good story, but then I kind of wanted to tell like a different story. So I guess that's how I kind of got into like Maroon City and telling like a story of just like already freed. Are you familiar with Maroon Towns and stuff like that?
No.
All right, so Maroon Towns are back in like slavery or whatever the case may be. Maroon Towns would be these towns where a lot of slaves would like run away. They would run into like the swamps and stuff like that, and they would form their own towns. And like the slave people, like the people that hunt down slaves, or whatever, they would try to like come and capture them, but they couldn't get through like the crocodiles and all the swamp stuff. And so the slaves actually thrived in those towns and stuff like that. So there's a guy named like Tariq Nasheed. He's like doing like this whole like 4-part documentary on it and stuff like that, whatever. So Maroon City was supposed to be like an element of that, right? Like the freer version. But in my Land of Fire story, which is a whole nother city, which is it's called it's really simple, right? The New New York or whatever. It wasn't like no real thought put into that. But in that city, it's more like slaved Black people, these people called melons under the caucus monarchy and stuff like that. So after the George Floyd situation, I'm like, I don't really want to tell enslaved stories. That's why I kind of like flipped it over and tried to like, but at the end of the day, it all connects. So yeah, I guess that's how I got from one part to the next part and stuff like that.
So how difficult, or if it ever was difficult for you, was the world building for, I guess, the whole entire thing, because it's both set in the same city. So how did you manage to create a world that is totally your own and integrate your influences in it, but maintain that this world is yours and not someone else's?
Well, honestly, one, it's not like 100% like complete. Like the world building process is like it's a, in my personal opinion, it's a tedious process, right? You know, and a lot of people like criticize the dude from Game of Thrones who write the book, George R. Martin, like, oh, why you didn't finish the book set? And like me, like as a writer, it's like, you know, I think I have like 30% of the actual world building done for what me personally I would call the Andromeda universe, but just to market it, I call it the Gulaverse. So it's all like in the same, you know, us as creators, we could go all over the place. We could have a million different ideas, but you got to simple it down for the audience. But as far as like the world building and stuff like that, it it's it takes a long, like, I would say it takes a long period of time, like 3-4 years, me thinking about this all day, every day, just like researching and just you know, reading like a lot of like Kabbalah type of stuff and just like mystic stuff and trying to like incorporate it all, like just life influence, ghetto influence, like street gang culture, like everything, but then trying to tell it in my own way, right? So if you look at the character Stokey on his back, he has a crescent like moon with like a Solomon seal or Star David, you know, connected. But that was like my way of taking like the 5%ers, right, the nation of gods and earths, and like putting them in the comic book. But then in another note, taking it and making my own thing and turn it into like a, you know, I call it I don't call it, it's actually an actual genre called augmented role-playing games, ARPGs, like Pokemon Go and stuff like that, like interactive games in which you could, you know, you could play it and you're participating in the real world, and real world experiences kind of transfer over into the game. So I wanted to take that and incorporate it into the comic book. So in the comic, the actual symbol that he has, there's a real website, right? MLOI.org, Malloy.org, for the actual like assassin's crew that Stokey works for, so people could kind of understand like what his ideology is. But it's kind of like a parody of freaking Nation of Gods and Earth and stuff like that. So that's how I try to like blend everything in. But it's a process. Like it's not like okay, one day I just sit down, or 1 week I just sit down and build this whole world, because like I'm still learning a lot of things about the world, and I don't want to try to like give off this superficial like you know, view to my reader or perspective to my reader, like I know everything. Like I'm still researching stuff like that, you know. Sometimes I look at one of my like old drafts, or one of like, you know, like like my first or second comic script draft or something, and I look back and I'm like, oh, that's not really right, I need to change this, I need to change that, because some of my perspectives about life change, you know. So yeah, I guess it's just like a step-by-step, day-by-day thing. That's how the world building process comes in. This is not even 100% complete at this point. It's like 30% in my mind.
Yeah. So what advice could you offer to other creators you wish someone would have told you when you first started?
When I first started creating comic books, or just started creating in general? Because I was like a hip hop manager prior to me writing comics.
Well, it can be either one, whatever advice you think you can offer. So maybe even if, so say like you were a hip hop manager, and I guess the advice you got from there that you could take into now working in comics, maybe.
All right, well, the advice I would take from like the hip hop aspect into comics is like just like the hustle. Like just don't, like, you could take no for an answer, but don't be dissuaded by no's. Like no's, that's a part of the game. That's like the hip hop version of it. And then like just like you said, and the first question was, what advice would I give to creatives?
Yeah, to other creatives you wish someone told you when you first started.
I wish someone told me. I think I would say be confident. Be confident, but also listen with an open ear. You know what I mean? So be confident, but listen with an open ear. You know, when people, not everyone is trying to criticize your work. You know what I mean? Or like, and I think criticism has such a negative connotation to it, because, you know, criticism is needed. But when people hear criticism, they think, oh, negative. They're like, quote unquote, hating on my work or something like that. So not all criticism is like negative, or it shouldn't even be taken a negative type of light. You know, a criticism is actually helping you, better your craft for the audience that you should be preparing your craft for. Because at the end of the day, us as artists and as creatives, we have to sell it to other people. Other people have to accept what we're giving out. I was, matter of fact, I was on another interview or whatever, and they said something like the director was making the show he wanted to make for himself instead of making the show the audience wanted to see. And I was like, yeah. And that's like the difference between my two comics. Last year, I made a comic that I personally wanted to read. This year, Stokey, I'm writing a comic that the people want. And now I'm seeing a response that I'm getting back and stuff. And you know what I mean? People reaching out to me, like even my Kickstarter campaign being like 60-70% done. Someone pledged like $200 probably like an hour ago. So it's like, it's like the response I'm getting back is like, okay, that's great that I'm writing something for the people, right? That's why I kind of had to jump around and just in that comic book world to say, let me stop this story I'm telling, because it's a specific way I want to tell the Nevaim story, right? It's a 15-year-old boy. I'm speaking to Black boys in that particular story. I can't I don't want to like, and I don't want to say like the proverbial like sell your soul or like sell them out for money or something, or you know what I mean, could go like pop and just give them something that would sell, but it's not going to really fulfill their soul, right? I want to give Black boys like that real, almost that message I never got as a 15-year-old Black boy. I got a message right from Naruto, and that's why I love comics and love anime and stuff like that. Like Naruto was giving me some type of like, almost in my personal opinion, almost a biblical like message in my eyes at that point in time. But what series Naruto is like, and Boruto, they're not really the same no more. What series is going to give that to young Black boys? So that's why really what I want to do it. I hope I wasn't like going with it. You know what I mean? I'd be going all around the block with some of these freaking answers and stuff like that.
No, that was fine. It was just, you answered it, and how that advice, I guess, of how it applies to you and how it can apply to other people. So yeah, that makes sense. But throughout the whole process, do you or did you ever get overwhelmed with anything? Like, did it ever or does it ever become too much? Like, how do you typically manage your mental well-being? So just not even with the comic series itself, it can be just juggling everything even outside of it and still try to maintain your, I guess, your sanity in a way.
Mary Jane. Nah, but seriously, honestly, one, to answer like the first question, it definitely becomes overwhelming almost every other day. Not only writing, the script and like putting together the comic, but dealing with like artists, dealing with the people who's like coloring, dealing with like the people who's like lettering on the comic, right? Dealing with trying to like market and promote the comic, and trying to go and locate an audience, right? Because me coming from a hip hop background, even though in hip hop, we kind of do like comics, right? Or like cartoon characters, but they're not really actively buying comics where they're buying like Off-White or Louis Vuitton sneakers or Gucci or something like that. So I have to like search for a particular audience that's gonna be interested in the artwork that I do. So it definitely gets overwhelming, even just coming up with the proper story that I feel like accurately reflects me, but is also science fiction and will appeal like to that audience and stuff like that. And like as far as like my mental health and stuff like that, like that is just like that's a step-by-step thing, because there's so much outside influence. Like it's so much like negativity outside like these doors, right? Like like once I walk out my apartment and stuff like that, I'm bombarded with a whole bunch of like negativity, and just being like a heterosexual Black man standing on a square and just being pro-Black and standing for what we stand for and stuff like that. You're gonna have a lot of other people that's not only, I don't want to just say jealous, right? Because I don't want to just that's such like a easy way out. But it's so much people that's almost scared of the there's some people that's scared of talented Black people or just people that's focused on their career path moving forward and trying to progress and stuff like that, it's almost like the positive people get double or triple the almost like the negativity pushed against us, right? So I have to almost put on like a super shield and double my confidence. This is why when you say like, oh, what advice would you give? It's just like you gotta have confidence, like especially if you're melanin, if you come from like a African American background, a Black background, you know what I mean? Like you have to have confidence in the art space, because these people are gonna try to tell you that like you not only you can't do it, but that your work is not really like good enough if it's and when in all actuality, even if it ain't good enough, it is good enough because where we come from, you know what I mean? We got to put extra effort to even get the small things done. So, it's just like, nah, it's just this. I don't know. You gotta be a warrior, man. Don't be scared. You know what I mean? Gotta be emboldened. Don't back down. Don't do nothing stupid, but
Yeah.
like that.
So my last question for you, David, is what is your idea of success? I ask that because as creators, if we're not getting regular paychecks from a full-time job or making consistent revenue from our art, we're considered failures or we'll consider ourselves failures. Many of us will put our dreams and projects on the back burner or give them up altogether because this career path can be highly intimidating and competitive. So what is your idea of quote unquote success?
My idea of success. My idea of success would be, well, all right, and I hope this like makes sense. My idea of success doesn't only focus on my success. So my idea of success actually focuses on like the Black community success as a whole. So I would only judge my success based on like how like the statistics of Black people's like if that and it may like kind of sound weird or whatever, but if it's like if the community as a whole in 5-10 years is in a better place and we're doing better and it's like things got better, then and somehow I'm like quote unquote successful. I have like a decent career or like a decent, but just like my own apartment, stuff like that. Just decent forms of happiness, right? Your own car, stuff like that, girlfriend, apartment, cool, home. As long as I have like that aspect of it and the Black community as a whole is like rising and we're empowering ourselves and it's more like, like Black businesses and less like stress and stuff like that, then I will feel I'm successful. But if in 5-10 years, like we're in a worser position and it's like, more, like let's say fathers start to become deadbeats again, because like Black fathers are like more in like their child's lives and stuff now. If more, if it's like more deadbeats and like people starting to like die and stuff more and stuff like that, as more shoes, like even though it's propaganda saying like, oh, a lot of people's dying, but it could get worse, right? So if it gets worse, then I'd be like, okay, I wouldn't feel successful. I feel like the art I'm putting into the world is having a negative impact, and maybe I need to go become like a police officer or something, and change my like occupation, because like I feel like my only existence, my sole existence, my every like the reason I was put on this earth is to make my Black people better in some way, shape, or form. And like I've kind of lived like that for like the last like 15-20 years. It hurt me, it burnt me. You gonna get like a lot of people taking that like mentality, taking that kindness for weakness, because you want what's better for them. You want what's best for people, even if they don't want what's best for themselves. But you know what I mean? That's just me. So yeah, if the black community is in a better place, then I'm successful. If they not, then nah. That's my definition of success.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that you want to touch on about Stokey Maroon City Detective as a whole that I may have missed, or discuss rewards for potential backers for the Kickstarter?
All right. Well, Stokey at like as a whole and stuff like that. You didn't really like miss much, but like just to like give like a little bit of the story so people can like maybe like understand. Stokey is about like this cool assassin guy. He comes to town. He's hired by an insurance broker to rescue a kid named Nevaim. Nevaim is the main character from the Ghoul series, which is available now on Webtoons. You could just type in THEGHOUL and it'll bring it up. It's only 10 pages. You could read how the whole second great flood took place and stuff like that. And it also introduces Nevaim in that story as well, with him creating a drone device and stuff like that, because like this like boy genius or whatever, right? So Stokey, him personally, he's the father figure to Nevaim, and in this comic, you're not going to get actually like, you know, him actually meeting Nevaim. In this comic, it's just him going through all these obstacles trying to find him. So it's a bunch of fights and stuff like that, and just backstory telling and stuff like that, or whatever the case may be. So you could basically understand the entire universe just reading this one issue of the comic. You can understand like all the books, everything. So that's that. And as far as like rewards for backers and stuff like that, to be honest, like I invested so much of my money and time into this project, like probably cause like it's almost like done and stuff, right? So I invested like so much money and like time into it. I guess the only reward would actually be the comic itself. You know what I mean? Like, just to be honest with you.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, but we are working on like posters as well. You know, maybe poster stickers. You know, like if not t-shirts, like maybe like some hats. I'm thinking about doing stuff like that. But you know, like as of like right now, I'm just like really just trying to like focus on just telling like good stories. I don't know. Comics is like my therapy. I don't know. Right now at this point in my life, comics is 100,000% my therapy. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Okay, well, again, I want to thank the Ghoul Comics CEO and writer of the Stokey Maroon City Detective comic series, David Haynes III, for joining us here today to promote the comic's first issue on Kickstarter. I highly recommend our listeners to consider giving the Kickstarter a look, share, and/or back if they can. All of David's socials and Kickstarter will be listed in this episode's details for all those who are interested. Again, I'm KS Garner, and you have been listening to the Solo Nerdbird Podcast. Thank you.